I only have $2, human. Let me sleep in a warm bed, until he finally invited her into his own. The corridor was almost silent, only the faint hum of the climate system and the softest of vents. White alloy panels stretched in seamless lines, bright enough to bleach the shadows from the floor. Shaw Dor walked down the center with a steady rhythm, shoulders squared, eyes alert, scanning each junction the way he always did. He didn't slouch. Even off-duty, his body carried the old Marine posture like welded steel. He had finished another 14-hour shift as an environmental risk assessor. The station's power grid was aging, and his job was to find where the pressure was thinning the walls or where heat was bleeding into space. It was routine work, methodical, quiet. He liked it that way. After years of war, the silence suited him. He wanted nothing dramatic anymore. No chaos, no attachment, no losses. But as he crossed Junction C19, something broke the pattern. A figure stood barefoot on the cold alloy tiles near the viewport. She wasn't moving, just watching the cyan storm clouds swirl far below the station. Her skin was pale blue and slightly luminous under the harsh light. Her long red hair was tangled and threaded with tiny pearl beads. Torn, translucent festival veils clung in strips to her hips and chest, fluttering weakly when the air system cycled. Her hands trembled. Between her fingers, 2 battered credit chips caught the light. 2 credits, she said. Her voice was quiet, hoarse, but clear, enough for a blanket, or 10 minutes by a heater. A man in a gray work coat glanced at her, then quickened his pace. 2 clerks lowered their eyes and walked past as if she wasn't there. No one slowed. Shaw did. His boots stopped in place. His chest tightened the way it used to just before gunfire. Instinct, not fear, more like the body bracing for choice. He studied her quickly. No visible wounds, no tracking tag on her ankle, posture upright though unsteady. She looked young. Early 20s maybe. Not broken yet, just close. Water, he said. His tone came out flat, controlled. He reached into his jacket and offered his field flask. Her eyes flicked to it, then to his face, suspicious. She hesitated, then stepped closer and took it with both hands. She drank slowly, watching him over the rim. "Name?" he asked. "Aurea." "Shaw." He paused. He didn't plan to get involved. He hated complications, hated the way they crawled into your life and stayed. But she was barefoot on a metal deck that could hit freezing at night. She wouldn't last another cycle. "My quarters are 5 junctions east," he said. "There's heat, food, no strings." Her brow tightened slightly, like she was waiting for the trap. "No one says that here." "I just did." For a few seconds, she didn't move. Then she tucked the credits into her palm and followed him. They walked without speaking. Her steps were short and careful. She stayed 2 meters behind him the whole way, eyes flicking between his back and the security cameras. Shaw kept his pace slow. He didn't turn to look at her, didn't want to spook her, but he listened for the drag of her feet or the sound of panic. Neither came. At his door, he keyed the panel. The lock clicked. His micro-suite was Spartan. A single bunk bolted to the wall, gray sheets folded sharp, a small console and shelf, a thermal panel, a wash alcove behind a transparent curtain. No clutter, no smell. Aurea stepped inside and stopped like she was afraid to touch anything. "Heat panel," he said, nodding toward it. She went to it and pressed both palms flat. Her shoulders trembled as warmth spread through her arms. A small breath escaped her throat. Shaw took a clean undershirt from the locker and set it on the bunk. "Wear that. It's warmer." She watched him carefully. "Turn around." He turned. Fabric rustled. When he faced her again, she was wearing the shirt. It hung off one shoulder and brushed her thighs. The beads in her hair caught the light. He filled a cup from the console tap and handed it to her. "Mineral water. Sip it slow." She obeyed. Her hand still shook. "You're from Zethra?" he asked. She gave a small nod. "Festival performer." Or, "I was." The crowd left. Security swept the floor. "I had nothing after that." "What were you planning to do tonight?" "Stay awake until my feet stop hurting." Her voice was flat, not dramatic, just factual. He nodded once. He knew what it meant to run out of options and stand in the cold pretending you weren't waiting to collapse. "You can stay," he said. "Use the heat." Washington eat. Lock the door from inside. Her head tilted. Why? Because you're freezing. She stared at him for several seconds, eyes sharp like she was testing for hidden rules. Then she stepped away from the panel and curled up on the folded blanket by the wall. I'll stay here, she said. That's fine. He moved toward the door. I'll leave for work at 06. If you wanted to wait before entering tomorrow, say it now. Wait before entering, she said quietly. Done. He stepped into the hall. The door slid shut behind him. For a long moment, he stood there, hands in his pockets, jaw locked. Part of him wanted to walk back in, make sure she wouldn't choke on the water, make sure she wouldn't vanish into the corridors again. He forced himself not to. This had to be her choice. Inside, Aurea lay still with her eyes open, hands pressed to the warm panel. Her breathing slowed. The tremor in her legs stopped. The station hummed around her, precise and indifferent. Shaw walked back to the vending row and bought 2 sealed ration packs and a hygiene kit. He placed them in the delivery slot by his door. Then he left without knocking. He told himself it was temporary, just until she warmed up, just until morning. But even as he walked away, he knew that wasn't true. The station's morning cycle came with a soft shift in light, white panels brightening by a few degrees. The air carried the faint chemical bite of sterilization, the smell that told everyone the filters had just flushed. Shaw keyed his door from the outside and paused, listening. No movement inside. He knocked once. It's Shaw. A soft click. The lock disengaged. He opened the door halfway and stayed in the frame until she spoke. Entry, Aurea said quietly. He stepped inside. The air was warmer than when he left. The folded blanket was still by the wall, though now shaped into a more deliberate nest. The hygiene kit wrapper was gone, the bin emptied. She sat cross-legged on the floor, his black undershirt hanging loose from one shoulder, her long red hair tied back in a makeshift, not using a thin strap from her torn veils. She held his tin mug with both hands. Steam curled from the surface. You found a brew, he said. You left it obvious, she replied, voice steadier than last night. He took his own mug from the console. The bitter smell was familiar, grounding. He sat on the bunk across from her, boots planted. She drank slowly, watching him. Her eyes no longer darted to the door every few seconds. Shaw studied her with the same steady focus he used when inspecting load-bearing beams. Her hands had stopped shaking. Her color had returned, skin now a richer blue instead of the pale, wash-tone she'd had last night. You ate? He asked. Yes, both packs. She gave a faint smile, even chewed the seal film. Instinct. He nodded once, approving. For a moment they drank in silence, just the hum of vents between them. Then Aurea set her mug down and folded her legs under herself. Why do you live here alone? She asked. The question was direct, and he didn't answer immediately. Most people on Narrated Prime didn't ask personal things, not unless they wanted something. I prefer controlled space, he said. No surprises. No arguments about where things go. You were military, she said. It wasn't a question. Marine Corps. Environmental Division. Deployed on Sithra Corps, Eshin Ridge and back. He spoke like reading coordinates off a map, detached. Did you leave, or did they discard you? He met her eyes. I left. I had enough of digging people out of collapsed domes who wouldn't have been buried if someone had checked the seals right. Her gaze softened. So you came here to keep things from breaking? Yes. It was strange saying it aloud. He had never explained it to anyone on Narrated Prime. His co-workers didn't care. Most people didn't even talk in the halls if they could avoid it. Aurea studied the room with slow eyes. You keep it clean? Perfect even. But it feels like no one lives here. That's the point, Shaw said. Not anymore. The line landed heavier than she seemed to intend. She broke eye contact first, tucking one leg tighter under her. I need to know, she said after a pause. If I stay here for a while, how far does your kindness go? Shaw set his mug down and leaned forward on his knees. I won't ask anything of you. Not food, not work, not your body. If you want to stay, you follow 3 rules. Lock the door when you're alone, don't touch the console without asking, and tell me if you get sick or hurt. That's it. Her jaw tightened. No one gives shelter without expecting something back. I'm not no one, he said simply. The silence that followed wasn't tense, just heavy. She nodded once, slowly. "Then I'll stay," she said. Shaw stood and crossed to the small cabinet, pulling out a fresh thermal blanket. He laid it on the bunk with precise hands. "From now on, you sleep in the bed. The floor stays cold even when the air doesn't." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "You'll still be here." "Yes. And you won't touch me." "No." She searched his face for any flicker of deception. Found none. Finally, she stood, gathered the folded blanket from the floor, and placed it on the shelf. She moved carefully, deliberate in every gesture, as if showing she would not disrupt his space without permission. "Where do you go each day?" she asked as she sat on the edge of the bunk. "Maintenance, Sector 3. I inspect the seals and conduits. If they crack, people suffocate. Or freeze." "Do people here even thank you?" "No," he said. "They don't know who does it. They just wake up alive." "That's enough." Something in her expression shifted at that. Not pity, something closer to recognition. She looked down at her hands. "Zethra doesn't do quiet," she said. "Noise all the time. Drums, people yelling from balcony to balcony. You forget how loud it was until you're somewhere like this. You miss it." "I miss not feeling invisible," she said. Shaw didn't reply. He had no answer that wouldn't sound hollow. He checked the time on the console. "I'll be back at 1900. If you want to leave during the day, leave. If you want to come back, come back. No obligation." "I'll be here," she said. He nodded, put on his jacket, and left. The door sealed behind him with its usual soft click. Aurea sat on the bunk for a long time, staring at the empty space he left behind. Then she slowly lay back, arms crossed over her stomach, eyes fixed on the ceiling. For the first time since the festival ended, her body began to believe she might be safe. She didn't trust it yet, but she stayed. Shaw returned to the micro suite at 1900 sharp. The corridor lights had dimmed to evening mode, softer but still sharp at the edges, reflecting on the alloy floor. He keyed the door and paused, listening for sound inside. No movement, just the low hum of the heat panel. He knocked once. It shone. The lock disengaged. He stepped in, boots silent. The first thing he noticed was that the room didn't look like he had left it. It was cleaner, not just orderly but arranged. His data pads were stacked flush at the console's edge. The towels hung perfectly aligned on the rack. The air was warmer and faintly scented, not from any artificial fragrance, but like clean skin after washing. Aurea sat cross-legged on the bunk, hair damp from a recent rinse. Wearing his undershirt and a pair of station-issue shorts she must have scavenged from the bottom locker. Her skin glowed faintly in the white light, and her posture was straight now, not defiant, just steady. She looked at him directly. "You came back. I said I would." She tilted her head slightly. "Most don't." He set his jacket on the hook and placed a sealed ration pack on the shelf. "Eat this. Higher nutrient load than yesterday's." She accepted it without comment, tearing the seal carefully, then glanced at him. "You don't ask where I go when you're gone." "You didn't leave," he said. "You were sure of that?" "Yes." He moved to the console, checked the temperature log, and noticed the panel had been run on low all day. Efficient. This place was warmer, but not wasteful. "You stayed." She chewed slowly, watching him as if trying to work something out. "You weren't curious what I might do alone in your room." "I was," he said, "but curiosity isn't suspicion." That silenced her for a beat. She set down the empty pack. "Most men I've known would have searched me, or the room. I'm not most men." Her gaze lingered on him longer this time. Then she broke it and stood, walking to the thermal panel. She pressed her palm to it like a habit now, absorbing its steady warmth. Shaw leaned against the console. "Tell me something. What brought you here?" "Narrated Prime. No one from Zethra drifts here by accident." That was the question he'd avoided since last night, and he knew the listeners would want it now. She hadn't said why she came. Aurea's eyes stayed on the panel as she spoke. Zethra's markets dried out. The festivals stopped drawing tourists. The trade lines rerouted. "I danced to feed myself. At first it worked, then it didn't. When you can't bring in crowds, you get dropped. I tried the orbital circuits. Failed every entry exam. No education record. No residency file. No sponsor. Then you tried here," Shaw said. It was the only station still taking walk-ins. No questions, just a work permit and a blank cot. I lasted 2 weeks. The festival crew cut me when they realized I wouldn't sell more than dance. He stayed quiet, letting the words land. She didn't dramatize any of it. Her voice was flat, like reading numbers. After that, she continued, I had 1 chip left. I spent it on a corridor access badge and walked until I couldn't stand. He understood now why her body had locked so tightly when he first offered help. She hadn't been afraid of him. She'd been waiting for the price. You kept the badge? He asked. She reached into the folded veil strips on the shelf and held up the dented card. Still works. Might be the only thing I own that the system recognizes. Keep it. You might need it again. Her expression flickered at that, some mix of gratitude and something sharper, like she didn't want to need anyone's permission to stay. He shifted topics, knowing when to let her hold her dignity. Did you fix the scene by the console today? Yes. I used a strip from the veil hem. It seals better now. Smart, he said, and meant it. She turned from the panel and stepped closer, folding her arms. What about you? Why this station? Why alone? He hesitated. No one here had ever asked. After the war, they offered me a promotion. More pay, desk work, no field exposure. It meant signing for another decade. I said no. I wanted something simple. Just maintenance, inspections, no command. Her eyes softened. You don't want to be needed. I don't want to be depended on, he corrected. Being needed is fine. Being someone's last hope is how people get killed. Aria's lips pressed into a thin line. And yet you picked me off the floor. That was different. Why? He didn't answer immediately. He met her eyes. Because everyone else walked past. The silence after that was different, no longer defensive. More like the air had shifted. Aria broke it by walking to the bunk and sitting down. So what happens now? You stay as long as you want, Shaw said. No limit. No contract. Her hands curled in the blanket's edge. And if I never leave, then you don't. She looked at him for several seconds, unreadable, then nodded once and lay back on the bunk, eyes on the ceiling. I don't trust this, she said softly. But I want to. Take your time, he said. She closed her eyes. Her breathing slowed. Shaw stayed standing for a long moment, watching her shoulders rise and fall. He realized he felt calmer than he had in months. The tension he usually carried in his jaw had gone slack. He crossed the room quietly, dimmed the lights to night mode, and sat on the floor by the wall. Not the bunk. Close enough to be here, far enough not to corner her. As he leaned his head back and let his eyes adjust to the low glow, he knew something had changed. She wasn't temporary anymore. He wasn't sure what she was yet, but not temporary. And for the first time since he set foot on Narrated Prime, that didn't feel like a threat. Shaw woke before the morning cycle lights rose. The station was still in its dim, pre-dawn phase, the air quiet except for the faint hiss of the vents. He stayed still for a moment, listening. Aria's breathing was slow, steady. She had shifted in the night, curled on her side with her back to the wall, one arm stretched across the empty space where he usually sat. She hadn't stirred when he moved. That struck him. The night before, she had flinched at every small sound. Now her body let itself rest. He stood carefully, boots silent on the alloy floor, and keyed the console for 2 brew cycles. The smell of scorched bitter grounds filled the small space. When the lights brightened on schedule, she stirred. Her eyes opened, amber in the pale glow. You stayed. Yes, he said, handing her the mug. She sat up slowly, holding the blanket around her shoulders, and accepted the drink. Her hair was tangled across her collarbone, still faintly red even in the washed light. No alarms, she said, glancing toward the console. None, he confirmed. A pause. You always check the system before speaking. Habit, he said. In the field, you didn't talk until you knew it was clear. Do you ever stop? No. She sipped the brew, wincing at the taste, then set it aside. I used to wake up to drums. Noise meant life. Here, it feels like the station's waiting for something to break. It is, he said. That pulled her attention fully to him. Is it that bad? He hesitated, then decided she deserved the truth, something the listeners might also be wondering. Until now, they hadn't heard what he actually did beyond vague inspections. The lower thermal grid's 50 years old, he said. Half the weld seams are brittle. Pressure surges push stress fractures into the panels. If one fails, a deck section freezes in under 2 minutes. Everyone inside suffocates or locks up before they can move. Her fingers tightened on the blanket. And you're the only one checking it? Me and 4 others. But the others don't crawl ducks. They run sensors from terminals. I prefer seeing the cracks myself. Because you don't trust anyone else to notice, she said quietly. Because I don't trust systems to notice, he corrected. That landed differently. She nodded, thoughtful. After breakfast, Shaw pulled on his slate jacket. I'll be back at 1900. There's a station audit tomorrow. Routine, power draw, water use. If you want to stay here, it has to look like you live here. Officially. Her eyes narrowed. You mean, register me? Not yet. But if they ask, they need to see you belong here. What happens if they don't? They flag the unit. I get relocated. You get escorted off station. Her jaw tightened. So they'll throw me back into the corridors. Yes. She thought about that for a long moment, then said, what do I have to do? Make it look real. 2 towels, 2 mugs, 2 pairs of boots by the door, a few clothes in the cabinet. Just enough to prove I'm not living alone. Aurea studied him. And if this ties you to me? If they question why someone with no record lives with you? They won't. I checked the audit logs. No one reads deeper than resource consumption. It's mechanical. She gave a small laugh without humor. Like everything else here. Not everything, he said. She didn't reply. He left, and for the rest of the day, Aurea worked silently. She reorganized the cabinet, leaving space between his neatly folded slacks and shirts. She washed and dried both mugs, setting them side by side on the shelf. She patched one of her veil wraps into something closer to a skirt. She lined her scavenge station shorts next to his boots at the door. By the time Shaw returned, the room felt lived in. Not warm exactly, but not sterile anymore. She stood near the console as he entered, arms folded. It looks real. It does, he said, scanning the space with his usual methodical eyes. Does this mean you want me here? He stopped moving. The question was too direct to sidestep, and he didn't want to lie. Yes, he said. It does. Her shoulders eased slightly. Then I'll stay. She turned away quickly, pretending to adjust the thermal panel. He let her have that moment. They ate together at the shelf, silent but not uncomfortable. After, Aurea curled up on the bunk again, hair loose down her back. Shaw sat at the console, filing his inspection reports, but his eyes kept sliding to her. Not because she was beautiful, but because she was there, breathing, settled. And for the first time, he caught himself imagining she might still be there tomorrow. He closed the console, dimmed the lights, and sat on the floor against the wall. Neither of them said goodnight. Neither of them needed to. Shaw's internal clock woke him before the lights rose again. He sat on the edge of the bunk this time. Aurea was still asleep, one arm draped across her waist, hair scattered across the pillow like a red spill of wire and beads. Her breathing was slow and even. It was the first time she hadn't curled up tight in her sleep. He dressed quietly, slate jacket, boots laced tight, wrist console strapped on. The station was quieter than usual as he walked the empty corridors towards Sector 3. No voices, no foot traffic, only the low structural groan of pressure settling through the spine of Narrated Prime. The ducts were colder than normal. He crawled through the main vent grid, scanning each seam with his wrist sensor, and found what he expected. Stress microfractures spiderwebbing across welds. They weren't emergencies yet, but they would be. The others on his team didn't go down this far anymore. They trusted the sensors. Shaw didn't. Sensors couldn't smell the sharp metallic tang that meant vaporized alloy. He logged the cracks, marked the panel plates with thermal tags, and worked until his hands went numb inside the gloves. When he returned to his quarters 13 hours later, the door unlocked before he touched it. Aurea stood inside, wearing the short station skirt she'd made from her torn veils. The undershirt clung loose to her frame, slipping off one shoulder. The room was warmer, the air faintly humid from a recent wash cycle. She held his mug. You came back late. Work ran long, he said, removing his jacket. You crawl into places no one checks, she said, almost accusing, as if she'd pieced it together while he was gone. Yes. Her lips pressed into a thin line. You come back shaking sometimes. You think I don't see it? He paused. The comment landed harder than he expected. I shake because I get cold, he said finally. That's not the only reason. Shaw didn't answer. He walked to the wash alcove, ran the tap until steam filled the air, and splashed his face. When he came back out, Maria had cleared the console surface and set out 2 ration packs like a quiet ritual. They ate on opposite ends of the bunk, silent. When they finished, she set her empty wrapper down and spoke without looking at him. Do you want me here just to make it look real for the audit? No, his voice was immediate, steady. Then why? He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, eyes on the floor. Because I like walking back to something that isn't empty. She glanced at him. Her face softened in a way he hadn't seen yet. No guard, no performance, just a flicker of relief. I don't know how to live in someone else's space without disappearing, she said. Then don't disappear, he said. Stay visible. Leave your things out. Take the heat first. Use the room like it belongs to you. Maria was quiet for a long time. Then she stood and walked toward the cabinet. She pulled his folded undershirts out, set one on her side of the shelf, and placed a repaired skirt beside it. Small acts, precise, deliberate. She turned. The audit one? Tomorrow. Afternoon cycle. Will they ask about me? Maybe. If they do, answer as if you've been here a long time. And if they see through it, they won't. He met her eyes. Because we'll make it true. She blinked, caught off guard by the weight of it. The room went still. The only sound was the quiet thrum of the heat panel. Aurea stepped closer, close enough that her bare knees brushed his. She didn't touch him otherwise. She only stood there, eyes steady, silent for several long seconds. Then she pulled back. Okay, she said. Then I'll stay visible. She crawled onto the bunk, lay on her back, and left her legs stretched across the space between them like a quiet claim. Shaw sat on the floor beside the bed, watching the storm lights strobe faintly through the thin viewport. His heartbeat had gone uneven, and he couldn't explain why. He stayed there until her breathing slowed. Then he reached up, turned off the console light, and let the darkness close in around both of them. The audit day came with the clean mechanical precision that defined Narrated Prime. The station's morning lights rose in a cold gradient, shadows retreating into the corners. Shaw was awake first, already dressed, boots polished, hair damp from a rinse. He stood at the console reading system bulletins while Aurea sat up slowly on the bunk behind him, rubbing her eyes with the back of her hand. She had changed. The hollow-eyed girl from the corridor was gone. Her skin held color now. Her gaze stayed steady. She wore the patched station skirt and his black undershirt, its hem brushing the tops of her thighs. She stretched her arms with a soft crack of joints and caught him watching. You look like someone preparing for war, she said quietly. It's just a resource audit, he replied. Then why does your jaw lock when you breathe? He didn't answer. She had noticed. Of course she had. They ate quickly. Ration bars, hot brew. Aurea cleared the mugs while he checked that the temperature logs matched their projected use. He had explained the routine the night before. A 2-minute visit from a clerk, data pulled from the console, a visual check for occupancy, nothing else. Still, his muscles were wound tight as cable. Aurea stepped in front of him, arms folded. You think they'll see something? I think they'll look for reasons to make work for themselves, he said. She studied his face, then reached past him and deliberately scattered her beads across the shelf. They rolled and clinked softly. Then let's make it look like chaos. Shaw almost smiled despite himself. Controlled chaos, he said. She set one mug near the bunk and one by the console, left her skirt draped half over the chair, and tossed the spare towel across the rack. The room no longer looked staged, it looked lived in. When the door chime sounded at precisely 1300, they were sitting side by side at the shelf, 2 mugs steaming. Shaw rose first. His posture was calm, exact. He keyed the door. A uniformed audit clerk stood outside. Tall, thin, tablet in hand, face drained to color like all long-term station staff. His eyes flicked over the scene inside, scanning without expression. Door, Unit 31C, the clerk said. Routine residential review. Occupancy verification. Proceed, Shaw said, tone steady. The clerk stepped just inside. He didn't greet Aurea, didn't acknowledge her at all. He walked the space in a single slow arc, tablet chirping quietly as it logged power draw and water cycles. His gaze passed over the bed, the clothing in the cabinet, the 2 mugs, the towel rack. How many occupants? He asked flatly. 2, Shaw said. The clerk didn't look up. Duration? 18 cycles. Shaw answered without hesitation. The tablet beeped once. The clerk turned on his heel, walked out, and paused at the threshold. No flagged irregularities. Continue as registered. Then he left. The door hissed shut. For 3 seconds, neither of them moved. Then Aurea let out a sharp exhale and dropped her head back, laughing once. A small, disbelieving sound. Shaw sat back down, unfastening his collar. It's done. She looked at him, a faint smile still caught in the corner of her mouth. You didn't even blink. That's how they stop looking, he said. Her smile faded into something more serious. What happens now? Now, he said, you're part of this unit, official or not. She watched him for a long moment, like she was weighing the words for hidden angles. Finding none, she leaned forward, elbows on her knees. I didn't think I'd ever have a unit again, she said quietly. Zethra never gave permanence. It was just tense and firelight and moving when the work ended. This station won't move, Shaw said. That's what makes it scary, she replied. Her tone wasn't bitter, just honest. Shaw stood, crossed the small room, and opened the narrow cabinet. He slid his folded undershirts to the side, leaving half the shelf open. Yours, he said simply. Aurea blinked. Then she stood, walked over, and placed a repaired skirt and veil wrap in the space without comment. She closed the cabinet slowly. This is real now, she said. It was real when you chose to stay, he said. Her shoulders eased. Something inside her had unclenched, though she didn't say it. That evening, the tension that had hovered over the room for days finally lifted. They cooked one of the higher-grade ration pouches Shaw had been saving, and she teased him for cutting the portion blocks with a precision blade as if they were glass. When they sat down to eat, they sat closer. Their knees touched. Neither of them moved away. Afterward, Aurea cleaned the mugs while humming softly under her breath, a sound so out of place on Narrated Prime it made the air feel different. When the lights dimmed, she crawled onto the bunk and pulled the blanket to her waist. Shaw started to sit at the console like usual, but she caught his wrist. Sit here, she said, patting the bunk beside her. He hesitated. Then he sat. She lay on her side, facing him, her hand tucked under her cheek. He stayed upright for a while, boots on the floor, eyes tracing the faint blue glow of her skin in the dark. You're still tense, she murmured. It takes time to stop expecting collapse, he said. Then I'll stay until it stops, she whispered. He looked at her, but her eyes were closed, already drifting. For the first time, Shaw lay back on the bunk. And for the first time, the room didn't feel like a place he lived. It felt like home. The station ran on its usual mechanical rhythm, lights rising in sharp increments, vents sighing, boots echoing in distant corridors. But inside Unit 31C, the rhythm had changed. It no longer felt like a sterile box balanced over storms. It felt occupied. Shaw woke first, though barely. Aurea had shifted during the night, pressing into his side in her sleep. Her breath was slow and warm on his shoulder, her hand curled lightly against his ribs. He stayed still, not wanting to break the fragile ease she'd settled into. When the light cycle reached full, she stirred and blinked awake, amber eyes hazy from sleep. She looked at him and didn't flinch or pull back this time. You stayed in the bed, she said softly. You asked me to, he said. Aurea propped herself on an elbow, studying his face with quiet concentration. You don't sleep much. You move like you're waiting for something to go wrong. Old habit, he admitted. It used to keep me alive. Does it still need to? Less than before. She nodded once, then swung her legs off the bunk and padded barefoot across the alloy floor. She moved differently now, less cautious, more fluid. She cued 2 brew cycles on the console without asking how. He watched her do it and realized she must have been watching him all along, memorizing the sequence. They drank in silence. It wasn't tense silence anymore, just quiet. After breakfast, Shaw sat cross-legged on the floor with a small repair kit spread in front of him, resealing a cracked thermal glove. Aurea sat on the bunk, brushing her hair with slow, methodical strokes, each bead catching the light. She glanced at him occasionally, then spoke. "What happens now that the audit's passed?" "We live," he said. "Is that allowed?" "Yes." He didn't smile, but his tone softened. "They won't come back for months. The system marked this unit stable. And you trust it?" "I trust my work," he said. "Not the system. But it won't matter. They don't check what they think is solved." She absorbed that, then asked something that had been building for days. "What happens if you get reassigned or called back to the Corps?" "I won't," he said. "My contract ended. I signed out. No recall clause." "You made sure of that," she said quietly. "Yes." She set down the brush and pulled her legs up, chin resting on her knees. "I can't remember the last place I stayed long enough to memorize the ceiling." "You have time now," he said. She looked around the room, taking it in like she was seeing it fully for the first time. The 2 mugs on the shelf, the cabinet half filled with her clothes, the boots lined neatly by the door. It wasn't much, but it was anchored. Aurea slid off the bunk and crouched beside him, close enough for their shoulders to brush. She watched him reseal the glove, eyes tracking every motion. "You fix everything. Always." "It's what I know," he said. Her voice dropped. "Can you fix me?" Shaw stopped working. He turned his head until she met his eyes. "You're not broken." She held his gaze a long moment, then nodded slightly, as if that answer steadied something in her. They spent the day together, not talking much, just sharing space. He ran diagnostics on the cabinet hinge, while she repaired the hem of her skirt with tiny, precise stitches. She hummed under her breath again, and he didn't stop her this time. By the time the evening cycle dimmed the lights, the room had gone warm. Not from the panel, though it glowed steady, but from them. Aurea stood by the viewport, watching lightning flash in the cyan clouds below the station. Shaw stood behind her, hands loose at his sides. She didn't turn when she spoke. "I thought warmth would feel like weakness," she said. "It doesn't." "No," he said. "It's what lets you hold steady." She turned, looking at him with that same quiet study as in the mornings. "You said I could stay as long as I want." "I meant it. And if I don't leave, then I build around you." Something changed in her face at that, like she'd been holding her breath for days and had finally let it go. She stepped toward him, close. Her hands rose to his shoulders, light, uncertain. He didn't move, didn't reach, just let her decide. Her thumbs pressed into the fabric of his jacket. "I don't want to be a guest," she said. "You're not," he said. Aurea slid her arms around him. It was slow, deliberate, no performance. He wrapped his arms around her in return, steady and sure. For a long time, neither of them spoke. The station hummed around them, distant and irrelevant. When they finally laid down that night, they lay facing each other. No space left between. And for the first time, neither of them felt like they were surviving. They felt like they were beginning. The station cycled into its artificial morning, light panels climbing from pale gray to white. Shaw woke before the final rise, as he always did, but this time he didn't move. Aurea was tucked against him, her legs tangled with his, her forehead resting under his chin. She was warm, steady, breathing deep and even. He stayed still, letting his body adjust to the unfamiliar weight of someone choosing to stay. His mind tried to run its usual scan, door locked, panel status green, air pressure normal, but for the first time in years, it didn't feel urgent. Aurea stirred when the lights reached full. Her eyes opened slowly, golden amber against her blue skin, and she looked at him without flinching or masking anything. "You're watching me," she murmured. "Making sure you're real," he said. She smiled faintly, the smallest curve of her lips, and shifted up on one elbow. "I am." They shared the first minutes of the day in silence. It wasn't the tense kind they had lived in for so long. It was the silence of belonging, light, ordinary calm. After they dressed, Shaw cued 2 brew cycles. While they drank, he spoke, voice level. "The next step is formal registration." Aurea blinked. "For me, yes. If you want to stay permanently. It locks you to this unit." The system will see you as a resident, not a transient. Her hand tightened on the mug. Will they look into my past? Not if I handle the paperwork, he said. It's easier to add someone to an existing file than build a new one. No one checks domestic merges if power draw stays normal. She was quiet for a long moment. If they see Zethra on my record, they won't, he cut in. I'll register you as civilian class. No homeworld data, just a name. She set the mug down. Then do it. He nodded once. There was no ceremony to it, just quiet agreement. The rest of the day passed with an odd lightness. Shaw worked the early shift, but he moved faster, more focused, as if finishing tasks cleared space for something else. He filed his reports without lingering. When he returned at 1700, Aurea had changed the room again. The folded blanket she used to sleep on was gone entirely. The cabinet now held her skirt, her repaired veil wraps, and one of his undershirts, folded next to hers. The two mugs sat side by side on the shelf, drying from a wash. And on the bunk was a small wrap parcel. She stood near it, arms behind her back, almost hesitant. Open it, she said. He set his jacket on the hook and unwrapped the parcel. Inside lay a pair of lightweight alloy cups, slim, matte gray, clearly scavenged and polished to near-new condition. For us, she said quietly. Shaw turned one over in his hand. It was flawless. You repaired these? I found them in a supply chute. Cracked. Useless. She shifted her weight. Not anymore. He placed them carefully on the shelf, side by side with the tin mugs. They're perfect. Her eyes flickered at that, just for a second, but he saw it. Relief. They cooked together that night. Shaw cut the ration bars into pieces while Aurea boiled them down into a single thick stew, stirring with precise movements. They ate on the bunk, knees touching. Afterward, Shaw keyed the console and placed a thin brushed steel band on the shelf. Aurea stared at it. What is that? Residency band, he said. Legal marker. You wear it on your wrist. It syncs to the door panel and the resource logs. Her voice lowered. You already filed it. Yes. Under my name? Yes. For a long time, she didn't move. Then she stepped forward and picked it up. The inside glowed faint green as it registered her pulse. The band sealed with a soft click around her wrist. It recognizes you now, Shaw said. She turned her hand, watching the light trace across her skin. Then she looked at him. So this is permanent. It can be, he said, if you want it. Aurea stepped close. So close her knees brushed his. Her voice was steady. I want it. She set her hands on his chest, palms flat. He stood still, letting her decide. Her eyes searched his face one last time, then her mouth found his. The kiss wasn't rushed. It was slow, sure anchored, his arms wrapped around her, holding her as if the world wasn't made of alloy and rules. Her breath caught against his lips. She pulled back only enough to speak. I'm not passing through, she said. You never were, he answered. That night, they dimmed the lights and slid under the blanket together. No space left between them. No tension, no hesitation. Her head rested under his jaw, her fingers threaded with his. The storms rumbled far below Narrated Prime, flashing through the viewport in silent cyan arcs. But inside Unit 31C, the world had gone still. Shaw Dor and Aurea lay together, warm, anchored, and, for the first time, certain of tomorrow. They had stopped surviving. They had built a life.